Welcome back. Let's keep going now. We are continuing our conversation and we'll now turn to another one of the ACT favorites, faulty parallel structure. Okay? Parallel structure keeps equivalent ideas in the same grammatical form. Ideas in a series, by the way, we should point out, should be grammatically parallel even when the series consists of only a couple of items. All right? Hear it wrong. This is great. Hear it wrong. I like skiing, hiking, to take pictures, and running. Now, let's point out, obviously the message is clear, but the phrase to take pictures is not parallel with the other phrases. Here it is right. I like skiing, hiking, taking pictures, and running. Right? Here it right, for example, with Lincoln in the Gettysburg Address. That government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Right? Here's some principles of parallel construction that I definitely I would take some notes if you're trying to prepare for the ACT. You want to express all ideas in a series in the same grammatical form, again, as we said before, even when the series consists of only two items, right? For example, her parents objected to the loud music she played and to the late hours she kept. Example, after graduation, she promised to turn the volume down and to come home earlier. Note, each parallel idea consists of an infinitive, to turn, to come home, followed by a noun and an adverb, right? We want to use grammatical equivalents to make comparisons and contrasts. Let's hear the example wrong. They are worried more about public opinion than for what the effect of the proposal may be. Of course, to make it right and parallel, they are worried more about public opinion than about the effect of the proposal. Let's hear it wrong again. Going out to eat no longer thrills me as much as to cook at home. Let's hear it right, proper parallel. Going out to eat no longer thrills me as much as cooking at home. Parallelism is achieved by pairing two gerunds, going and cooking. Right? You want to stay alert for pairs of words that signal the need for parallelism. Either or, neither nor, whether or, both and, not only but also. And you want to revise by changing neither to either or changing or to nor. Okay? Remember to keep the pair of words close to each other in the sentence. If they're too far apart, your sentence may be hard to follow in terms of, what's actually going down. Let's do another example. Hear it wrong. Steve both started on the soccer and the basketball teams. Let's hear it right. Steve started on both the soccer and the basketball teams. Good job, Steve. When an article, preposition, or a conjunction appears before the series, the first in a series of parallel ideas, you want to repeat the word before the others in the series. The example now wrong. First, hear it wrong. Our mechanic did a better job on my car than his. Let's hear it right and paralleled. Our mechanic did a better job on my car than on his. Let's hear it wrong again. Before signing the contract, Steve spoke with the president and the treasurer of the company. Hear it right, parallel. Before signing the contract, Steve spoke with the president and with the treasurer of the company. Okay? You want to make sure that the parallel ideas are logical equivalents. Let's hear it wrong. This example wrong. Steve is 6 feet tall, kind, and a Texan. The example right and parallel. Steve, a 6-foot Texan, is kind. Let's hear it wrong. San Diego's harbor is reported to be more polluted than any city. Let's hear it right and parallel. San Diego's harbor is reported to be more polluted than the harbor of any other city. One more time, let's hear it wrong. Unlike most cars on the street, Ellie has her Subaru washed almost every week. Let's hear it right and parallel. Ellie's Subaru, unlike most cars on the street, is washed almost every week. Now, while this kind of stuff is silly for us in regards to informal grammar, the ACT folks love to test your knowledge of this kind of thing. And, let's say, in informal writing, like what you'll have to do on the ACT, they will look to see if you understand how to use rules such as these. So, learn them. Okay? Now, let's come to another major one. The active and passive sentence issues. All right? If you spend any time, for example, with a computer grammar check, you will often be told you're writing in the passive voice and the program will suggest that you write in the active voice. But what actually does that mean? The active verbs differ from the being verbs, right? Active verbs like leap, launch, laugh, show movement, right? They recreate life. Even active verbs that name sedentary activities like thinking and writing and sleeping have greater energy than passive verbs as is, were, has been. Active sentences are those structured in the active voice. Place emphasis on actions and who performed them, for example. For example, John slept through the movie. Another example, Steve applauded wildly at the end of the movie. Is there any doubt in these sentences about who did what? No, I don't think so. A passive sentence is one written in the passive voice. It puts emphasis on the receiver of the action or on the action itself. Or sometimes the performer of the action may be left out altogether. For example, listen to the passive voice. 6 weeks were spent preparing for the play. But notice the obvious question is, who prepared for the play? Hear the example of the passive voice again. A new painting was hung in the gallery. Obviously the question is, who hung the painting? Notice gets no recognition of any kind. Watch these rewrites, but still in the passive voice, but rewrites nonetheless. 6 weeks were spent preparing for the play by the acting group. And another one, the second sentence rewritten. A new painting was hung in the gallery by Carmine. Now, while these sentences give us more information, no question, each of them still emphasizes the action instead of the performer of the action. So we want to rewrite one more time to make sure we are writing in the active voice. To turn them into sentences in the active voice, by the way, we're going to make the actor and the subject of the sentence, and we're going to place it before the verb, right? Watch this one. The acting group prepared for the play for 6 weeks. Okay? How about this one? Carmine hung a new painting in the gallery. Now, of course, let's just make a point. Sometimes passive construction makes a good deal of sense. For example, the sentence, the hospital was built in 2005, is passive, but the focus is on the date when the hospital was built, right? Writers prefer the active voice to the passive voice because most events in life don't just occur by themselves. Somebody does something, right? A person or a thing acts. And finally, you want to look for ways on the ACT to change a passive construction into an active one. More ways to pick up easy points, we might say, on the ACT. Now, let's talk for a few seconds about sentence structure, all right? Most sentences start with a grammatical subject followed by a verb. Steve jumped. Good writers try to vary the structure of their sentences. Instead of leading off with a subject every time, try to change things up a little bit by leading off with maybe a prepositional phrase, an adverb, an adjective, some other kind of grammatical unit, right? Watch an example of how we want to improve at this. For example, here we go. This is the normal, right? Steve introduced the idea of holding monthly block parties to reduce crime and help the residents get to know each other. Here's the varied example. To reduce crime and to help the residents get to know each other, Steve introduced the idea of holding monthly block parties. One more example of this is the sentence constructed from matched ideas set in juxtaposition. For example, it wasn't that the spirit of community caught their imagination, semicolon. It was their imagination that created a community spirit. By the way, note the use of the semicolon to avoid the run-on sentence, right, and or the comma splice if you were going to put a comma there, and the proper parallelism as well in this sentence. Now, you may see some of this on the ACT usage and grammar section, but the place where these ideas really matter is in the essay that you have to write for ACT and obviously any formal essay writing that you're doing. Sentences can be classified not only by their structure, but also according to their main purpose. Let's think about this for a moment. You can have declarative sentences that make a statement. You can have interrogative sentences that ask a question. You can have imperative sentences that make requests or give commands. And finally, you can have explanatory sentences which express sudden or strong emotions, right? The key here is you want to use a variety of sentence types, simple, compound, and complex, to create a variety of different types of sentences. You might think about starting with, for example, a prepositional phrase from the start, in the first place, at the outset. You might think about adverbs and adverbial phrases, originally, at first, initially. You might think about beginning with a dependent clause. When you start with this, because the opening is. You might think about conjunctions, and, but, not only, either, so, yet. You might think about adjectives and adjective phrases, fresh from, or introduced with, or headed by. You might think about verbal infinitives, to launch, to take the first step, to get going. You might think about participles, leading off, or starting up, or commencing with. Let's finish with a few comments about style, shall we? Technically, this is not grammar stuff, but it makes sense to cover it here. By the way, Strunk and White's Elements of Style is one of the classic texts about this topic. I recommend that you buy it. I recommend that you read it. It will really improve your writing. Okay? Grammatically perfect language can still be dull. Let's point this out. Repetitious, wordy, awkwardly expressed. The ACT folks love to slip a couple of questions into their test that tests their knowledge, your knowledge of good writing style. So let's cover one or two of these. First of all, there's potentially issues of awkwardness. It's hard to define, but you know it when you hear it. It just doesn't sound right. For example, rather than walk, Mr. Perkins drove his SUV to mail his letter, owing to the knowledge that the post office closed at 4:30. The phrase, owing to the knowledge, is grammatical, but it is awkward. So, rewritten, right? It would sound something like this. Rather than walk, Mr. Perkins drove his SUV to mail his letter because he knew that the post office closed by 4:30. Let's spend a few moments talking about another issue, faulty idiom issues. An idiom usually consists of a group of words that seems absurd if you take them literally. To have a ball at the party does not mean somebody gave you a spherical object, right? But you're having fun, right? Now, there's no logic to this kind of thing. A building burns down, a piece of paper burns up, a pot of soup just burns. Think about this. Both flammable and inflammable mean the same thing, easily set afire, right? Notice the way we play this game as native speakers. By the way, that drives second language learners nuts. We say we go to the movies and arrive at the movies. Now this is, again, not grammatical as much as it is more stylistic, right? We could say that we arrive to the movies, but we don't, because it's not idiomatic English, right? When we are talking about the ACT, the word idiom has another meaning. Not only expressions, but also to idiomatic usage, the selection and sequence of words used to convey a meaning. All right? Let's look at some examples of faulty idiom. For example, the wrong use. The general was unwilling to pay the price for victory. Of course, the general was unwilling to pay the price of victory. Another wrong example, Steve has a negative opinion towards me. The right example, Steve has a negative opinion of me. One more time, the wrong example, in regards to her future, Tina said she'd go to college. The right example, with regard to her future, Tina said she'd go to college. A classic example of this type of thing that we're talking about is what we call the double negative. Now, let's point out, English is strange about this. It allows you to use two negative words in a sentence to say something positive, right? The halftime performance of the marching band was not all bad. However, negatives meant to express negativity violate standard English usage. Don't use modifiers as never, no, and not with other negative words such as none, neither, no one, nobody, and nothing. Here's an example of a double negative. The kids are not doing nothing today. The example, of course, revised, the kids are not doing anything today. Because the words hardly, scarcely, and barely also qualify as negative words, don't combine them with other negatives, right? An example of a double negative. There are hardly no kids in school. We would want to rewrite to say there are hardly any kids in school. An example like this will possibly end up on the ACT, so you just have to make a note of it. We also have issues of faulty diction, faulty word choice, right? When good is used instead of well after a certain verb. When where is used instead of when, as in the time where he took the bus to Casper instead of the time when he took the bus to Casper. Problems in word choice usually occur when writers, A, ignore word connotations, implied meanings of words, B, fail to draw fine distinctions between synonyms, right, or simply C, they don't know the precise meaning of words. For example, hear it wrong. The poem contains allusions, I-L-L-U-S-I-O-N-S, to Greek mythology, what a magician does, when in fact, the rewrite here is the poem contains allusions, A-L-L-U-S-I-O-N-S, references to other literary texts to Greek mythology. Hear this wrong example. The boys ran afoul, A space F-O-W-L of the law, foul bird, right? When of course the rewrite is the boys ran afoul, one word, A-F-O-U-L. Here the example, wrong again. Another quality common to firefighters is their reliability on their fellow fire workers. When of course really what's being said here is another quality common to firefighters is their reliance, not reliability, reliance on their fellow firefighters. Now our final challenge is to talk about wordiness and redundancies. You want to revise a sentence if it contains words or phrases that either add no meaning or reiterate what's already been said. For example, hear this wrong. A necessary requirement for applying to many colleges is the essay. Well, a requirement for applying to many colleges, a requirement is obviously necessary, right? So we don't need to use the word necessary, it's redundant. Hear it wrong. An important essential ingredient of a hamburger is meat. Well, to hear it right, an essential ingredient, right? If it's essential, it's obviously important. We don't need to use both of the words together. Hear it wrong one more time. Have you read Lust for Life, the biography of the life of Vincent van Gogh? Well, hear it right. Have you read Lust for Life, the biography of Vincent van Gogh? There's no need to say the life of, since that's what a biography is, right? Hear it one more time wrong. During the months of July and August last summer, I had a wonderful summer vacation. Well, of course, hear it right. Last July and August, I had a wonderful vacation. You don't need to say summer. We all know that July and August is summer. Okay? Now, the challenge of learning this kind of thing is to give some energies to improving yourself as reader. The better you read, especially here I mean good reading, right? Well-written stuff, the better a writer you will be, and obviously a better test taker you will be. Speaking of writing now, let's spend a few minutes in Lecture 9 on sentence mechanics, punctuation, capitalization, one more way to increase your ACT score. Thank you.